3, 2, 1.
Racing World is presented by Race Control Magazine. Hi there and welcome into Racing World podcast, audio and visual as well through YouTube. My name is Darcy Watergrave along with David Turner and the birthday boy Bob McMurray. We are talking motorsport right the way through the lines to Australia because Mark Fogarty is going to be joining the program. He's the editor at large of the Auto Action magazine. Now, if you're watching, we'd love it if you were to subscribe, if you were to like and please share away. That means it gives us justification to carry on doing this. Of course, you can listen through Spotify. You can also listen through Radio Public and Anchor FM. A number of ways to digest our Racing World podcast. And I think because we've got Mark up so early, we'd best get straight to Mr. Fogarty.
7:30 for him.
Yeah, drag him out of his Melbourne Victoria nest and find out what's going on in the wide world of supercars. And welcome back to the Racing World podcast, and it gives me great pleasure to bring to the floor via the magic of video. This is some high-tech tin can and a piece of string. Editor at large, although he can hardly move at the moment, considering where he is domiciled. I suppose editor at large means he can move from the living room to the bedroom to the bathroom to the kitchen. It is the editor at large of Auto Action magazine, Mark Fogarty. Folks, welcome into the podcast. Great to see your smiling face, my friend. I trust you're well.
Yeah, well, hundreds, thousands, maybe, of little children are now screaming, running away that they've finally seen folks. But yes, good morning. I don't mean that. I didn't even know there was a 7:30 a.m. I only knew there was another 7:30. But yep, all good. We're still in lockdown. It's become very, very tedious and very restricting. And heads are going to roll at the end of all this, but let's not get political.
Oh, well, that just brings us to motorsport then, really, doesn't it? Yeah. Folks,
yes.
we've obviously got a championship winner. We've got a championship done and dusted in the supercars. We've got Bathurst to come. But your Auto Action magazine, which I've read just a little bit, you talk a lot about the future of Penske, the future of Anton De Pasquale, McLaughlin, Coulthard, all sorts of things. Just what's the story? What's happening in as brief sentences as you can make it, because there's a whole lot of bunch crap going on.
There's a lot to unpack. It's all go in Gotham City, as they say, as far as DJR Team Penske is concerned. And the first question is, will there still be a Penske component in that storied Australian team next year? Well, maybe not. Allegedly, a decision hasn't been made on whether Penske will continue in Australia with that team. Been a lot of chat for several months now that Penske were going to pull out. And given what's happened with the COVID-19 situation and with Roger Penske trying to run a multi-billion-dollar corporation, I would imagine he's probably got bigger fish to fry. So there's a lot of chat that Ryan Story, who currently runs the team and is a minority shareholder, will take over the majority ownership stake, probably partnered by Paul Morris, the very outspoken or self-styled The Dude, previously a supercars driver and supercars team owner. Also the manager, not coincidentally, of Anton De Pasquale, who is tipped to take over from Scott McLaughlin if, should I say when, Scott McLaughlin goes IndyCar racing next year, which is another pretty safe bet, I think. So, and ongoing speculation about the future of Fabian Coulthard, who, well, has certainly been a number two, whether you would judge enough over the course. And a few other drivers are in the picture, possibly to get the number two drive or a drive. One of them being Will Day, who's thought of very fondly within the DJR and also the Penske organisation. So this is all the rampant speculation going on, a lot of it well-founded, but I think, well, yeah, there will still be a Dick Johnson racing team next year. Penske pulling out doesn't mean the end of the team. The team is now well funded. It has the budget to move forward, understand. So lose Roger Penske, but we'll still keep Dick Johnson racing, but we'll probably lose Scott McLaughlin to the greater cause of a tilt with Team Penske in the IndyCar series.
I guess it begs a question as well. Then, what happens to Fabian Coulthard? Would he stay? Would he go anywhere else? Would he be able to go anywhere else?
Or is he desirable anywhere else?
I would imagine that if he's not renewed, that he would at least stay on with DJR or DJR Team Penske, particularly as a gun driver. He would certainly be your pick of the crop next year for a co-driver in the Enduros or Enduro, depending on how many we have next year. And he certainly is well thought of within the organisation, Penske organisation. I mean, he's a perfect Penske driver. Just look at him, not a hair out of place, good-looking bloke, presents well. He's a good spokesperson for the team and does present himself very well. So that would be my guess if he is going anywhere. Otherwise, I don't know, maybe return home to Brad Jones Racing, perhaps. That's a good question, but I think there's a lot of water under the bridge, as they say, to flow before all this is resolved. And once the McLaughlin thing is decided or confirmed, the dominoes will start falling from there, and it'll be a big loss to the Supercars Championship, certainly if McLaughlin disappears. I mean, he's just an absolute superstar, that's stating the obvious. But even someone like De Pasquale is going to have a tough act to follow in trying to fill the shoes of Scott McLaughlin. I mean, he's a once-in-a-generation driver. He is a phenomenon.
Is there a collective, sigh of relief from all the other teams and drivers now that McLaughlin is gone, such as his dominance? It's not just the 3 championships. Remember, it should have been 4, except for the meltdown in Newcastle. Maybe they're thinking we might better get back up on even peaking again. Is there a sense of that, or is it genuine, we're losing a superstar and this is not good for the series?
Oh, among the other competitors, yeah, they'll be having a big send-off party for him. They'll go down to the wharf, and as the ship sails away, they'll be waving goodbye. They'll be happy to see the back of him. I mean, that's a lot less competition and a lot more room to move. But no, in the bigger scheme of things, yes, the sport will certainly miss him. Whether he'd ever come back, I mean, he's young enough, he probably could, or come back for one-off appearances, say at the Bathurst 1000, which he's, of course, gunning for a second straight Bathurst win in a few weeks, 2.5 weeks. And, but yeah, his rivals will be quite happy to see the back of him, but the sport will miss him.
The other big thing, of course, in the last week or so is the $200 million odd deal with the Seven Network and Foxtel for Supercars. It's not an overly fantastic deal, but at least it provides an income stream for the series again, with the back end of the new naming rights sponsor as well.
It's a deal. It's allegedly $200 million. That is suspiciously close on an annualised basis to the existing deal, which was $241 million over 6 years. So they both annualise out, surprise, surprise, at $40 million a year in total. However, Seven are putting in much less than even 10 were doing before. Some say as little as $4 million a year. So Fox Sports is picking up the rest of it. And I think the $200 million was expressed as in, money and advertising. So you might find that the figures are being a bit inflated by all sorts of, not manipulation, but advertising. There's shared revenue deals, I think. And then, the production fee that Supercars gets from Fox Sports to produce the telecast. So the $200 million is debatable, but the basic deal, it's more of the same. It's wall to wall, all 3 days or 4, in terms of Bathurst and Adelaide, coverage of everything that's going on the track, not only supercars, but all the support events, and then regular and extensive free-to-air coverage on, as they say over here, the screen of 7. I think the big 6 marquee events will be shown live on the main 7 channel. The rest of them will be on secondary channels like 7 Mate, and also available on their streaming service 7 Plus. But unfortunately, there was talk or moves for a long while to try and get every so often, you know, a Sunday live race from one of the regular sprint rounds, you know, to get some more coverage. But I think you'll find that Fox Sports vetoed that. Anyway, the teams aren't happy about the money. You know, it's been expressed to me as significantly less, but they're accepting the deal because it means they'll get a lot more exposure on free-to-air, just simply because the 7 network, you know, has got the critical mass. It's a much bigger, more popular network than the 10 network is. So on balance, you know, it's a 5-year deal, plenty of exposure. So, you know, in this environment where sports rights, well, are barely staying still, and pretty much across the board everywhere are going backwards, you know, this is a reasonable 5-year deal that guarantees a lot of exposure for supercars. And it aligns too with the New Zealand TV deal or broadcast deal, which, if I'm not mistaken, is on Sky Sports. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, through Fox, obviously. Yeah, and Sky Sports. So in essence, it
you don't get any free. Do you get any free to air over there?
No, there's no free to air component. When Supercars did the deal here, it was an exclusive arrangement with Sky via Fox.
Well, there would have been a revolution if that had happened here. If there were no free to air, I mean, it's bad enough as it is. The last 6 years, there's been constant moaning. Even though the coverage on Fox Sports, you have to pay for it. You can pay as little as $25 a month through KO streaming service. But, you know, despite its wall-to-wall coverage, a lot of people just simply aren't interested, or just, you know, refuse to get pay TV over here. Even though, as I said, it's not just, if you get it, it's not just the supercars, it's every other major sport going. And every other major motorsport going. But anyway, that's the attitude.
Yeah, we're pretty used to paying for sport here. I think every form of sport, apart from maybe netball, is on some form of pay-per-view. But just going back into getting off the TV for a second, go back into the season. It started off with a hiss and a roar in Red Bull's favour, and it looked like it was going to be either them being more dominant, or at least there was going to be major competition. They fell off the trolley pretty quickly, and they now and again they scramble to get back on it. Is that all due to the double shock or whatever? How come the entire Red Bull organisation in Australia, racing team, did not get a thing sorted? And it was very obvious as we saw last week at the Bend.
It's a very good question, and I don't think there's a simple answer. There's just lots of small things haven't been done to the usual high standard at 888 Race Engineering. And there have been certainly a lot of mistakes. There have been strategic errors. Shane van Gisbergen has been, well, up and down doesn't begin to describe it. You know, there are some days when he's untouchable and he just wrings everything out of that Commodore. But there are other days when, like just the other day, he qualifies 22nd. 22nd. How does that happen? Well, they just stuffed up royally. And Jamie Whincup, he's been doing a better job. He's been more consistent, but head-to-head with Scott McLaughlin or even Shane van Gisbergen, you know, he's usually on the losing end of that. But, you know, there have been times Jamie's got up and, you know, grabbed a pole or a position, you know, on the first 2 rows of the grid. But he stayed in championship contention until this last weekend, simply because of his consistency. He wasn't scaring anyone to death with outright pace. And, you know, don't forget, he is a 7-time Supercars champion. arguably the greatest of all time. Also, he's getting on now. He's 37, somewhere around that. I know that sounds ridiculous, and look who's talking, 107. But, when you start to get towards 40 in supercars these days, it is so competitive and things are so close that, just age takes its toll and you just fall off slightly. And that slightly is hundredths of a second. And of course, often in qualifying, hundredths of seconds, thousands make the difference, 2 or 3 rows on the grid difference. So it doesn't take much to go slightly off the boil. Not that he's near the end of his career or anywhere approaching that, but with Scott McLaughlin still, don't forget, he's still only been in the championship in the main game a relatively few years. I think, we're talking half a dozen, 7 maybe at most. So he's still very much at the beginning, of his career in terms of maximising his skills. He hasn't reached his peak yet. He'll do that in IndyCars. So the Red Bull Holden Racing team have a lot of issues to address. They haven't got a great record up and down record, but they've shown they can make some mistakes during the Bathurst 1000, which is all they've got to play for now. So it will be interesting, to say the least, to see how things pan out, how they perform. I'm sure they'll be a front-running contender along with DJR Team Penske, but whether they get their whole act together and don't have little errors and slip-ups and mechanical failures and things, which they've been bizarrely a bit prone to this year, unusually. We're going to be on for an enthralling, exciting Bathurst 1000, perhaps more than ever, just simply because the shackles are off, the title's decided. The only thing to play for is that Peter Brock trophy, and it's the last race of the season, which hasn't happened. Well, it'll be 20 years now since the series has actually finished at the Bathurst 1000.
That's a really big thing, isn't it? Is the fact that championship's done and dusted. So you can kiss that one off the list. And it really is. It's game on at Bathurst. And I guess for any other team, it's redemption, because just like, say, the Indy 500, you win Bathurst and everyone's going to remember it. And it's not taking anything away from McLaughlin and championships, but Bathurst counts.
Oh, you can rescue the most shocking year by winning the Bathurst 1000. And it has happened many times that, people come out of nowhere to win it, Not that long ago, Will Davison and Techno, in typically bizarre circumstances, but, they grabbed it. No one would have been putting money on them before the race, I guarantee you. So anything can and usually does happen. At Mount Panorama, I'm beginning to sound like Murray Walker. Maybe it's time to retire. Oh, well.
What about the also runs? Also ran.
Oh, my goodness.
The season. Oh, here we go.
All right, that'll be
out of the tunnel. What about the also rans? What about the rest of the field? Who do you think's been the most improved team-wise outside of the big two, and also driver-wise? Plainly, we've got a soft spot for the Kiwi drivers, and I think Andre Heimgartner has had a wonderful year so far. Probably not the best he could actually be, but he's getting close. So guys like that, who's on the way up? And same with the teams, do you believe, folks?
Tickford Racing, I think, generally speaking, you'd have to say is the most improved. They were nominally the number 3 team anyway, but they've lifted their game. They have Mustangs, so they damn well should be performing. But particularly with Cam Waters, he's come to the fore and shown himself to be consistently quick, and finally broke through for a win on the weekend. So he and the team there are showing their long-awaited promise. James Courtney has proved that, with a quick car, he won't win races at the moment, but he's competitive. He's regularly in the top 10s. Lee Holsworth is, more often than not in the top 10, certainly in qualifying, not so much in racing. And Jack LeBrock in his first season, it would have expected more from him. He hasn't certainly just stepped in and taken over from Chaz Mostert in that super cheap auto-sponsored Mustang. He got a win, but in strange circumstances, with the whole tyre lottery back at Sydney Motorsport Park. But overall, Tickford Racing have finally looked like, a proper team, and they're snapping at the heels. The big disappointment among the teams is clearly Erebus Motorsport. The Penrite Racing mob have just, they've dropped the ball. David Reynolds has just gone missing. He is really, really struggling, and who knows why. Di Pasquale has been more competitive, but that's a yo-yo too. He's up and down. He's just as likely to be, midfield in the pack, certainly in qualifying or in the racing, as he is up the front. He's proven that he has the potential as a driver to get up on the podium or win races without the assistance of tyre nonsense. But generally speaking, I would have to say that Erebus, they've lost their mojo, and I don't know if they're going to find it again.
And on that, I think we can bid you back to your bed again, Mark Fogarty, editor-at-large in the living room of Auto Action magazine. Thanks again, as always, for your insight, your keen sense of humour, and that wonderful voice that you possess. Can't think he possibly got that.
It's been real. It's been a pleasure. It just wasn't a real pleasure. But
and don't tell me you're actually in bed at this moment, please, because that would just make me go and throw up.
No, I would not do that to you or the listeners, viewers. No, that would be too much. No, it's been fun as usual, guys. Thanks for the chat. We'll catch you down the track. Bye for now.
Yeah, too right, folks. Thanks very much, and I'll put up with the boys for the rest of the show. So thanks very much.
Yes, indeed we will. And Racing World continues shortly as we carry on around this table yelling at each other about race cars. See you, folks.
Perspective Group is a leading media production company based in Auckland, New Zealand. Established in 2009 by former TVNZ producer David Turner, Perspective Group offers you a vast arrangement of media options to fit any size or budget. It covers truly global services supported by some of New Zealand's leading media talents. For more information, contact Perspective Group Limited at perspectivegroupltd@gmail.com and check out the website perspectivegroupltd.com, where you'll find even more information on creating your media solutions.
You have a dream. You have all the drive in the world. You have talent to burn. Now all you need is a chance. Toyota are committed to developing and nurturing New Zealand's next generation of world-class racing drivers, because if you can dream it, we can do it.
Always great to catch up with folks. The connection was less than ideal. That's not our fault. It's not actually the internet's fault either. That's Mark Fogarty. He's getting so old now that he's actually starting to buffer quite naturally. So we'll just blame that on folks. Always good to catch up with.
Tin can and the piece of string.
No, certainly not. High quality tin can, but always great to catch up with folks and what he thinks of the supercar season. Touched on Bathurst there, and that's going to be the grand dance at the end, isn't it?
You know, I don't think there's anybody else with the insight that Folks has into the whole supercars thing. I mean, he used to be in Formula One, he used to do all sorts of stuff, but supercars is his bag. Whenever I've been to a supercars race, he's the one that's allowed into the supercars truck to do all his media reports and stuff like that. So if he don't know it, it ain't happening. Simple.
Always good to have him on board. Right, wasn't just supercars over the weekend. We also looked back to F1 and F2, and I got a phone call when I was watching a replay of the races. I watch everything on delay.
I know, because you sent us, don't tell me who's won.
Yeah, well, no, it's when you have a young girl, you know, you need to record it all and watch it later in the piece when she's gone to bed, okay? So I simply don't answer the phone. So I'm saying the phone rings and it's Bob McMahon. Must be something to do with the race cars. It doesn't ring me at this time of night, and I didn't answer it. Half an hour later, Formula 2, I watched these cars pile into the sides. I mean, that's probably what he called me about. That was an astonishing opening, wasn't it?
It was. It was in race 2 of the weekend, the sprint race. And do you remember that accident, a similar accident happening a couple of 3 years ago? And I can't remember who was involved. It's in Formula 1 now, but at the same corner. once you get outside on that corner, on the dust, which both cars did, I don't think either car was to blame. I think they were just getting further and further out on the dust, and they crashed. But those barriers protected them both. You see the state of the cars. Unbelievable. It was made worse by the barriers flying around, but that's incredible. Talking about Formula 2, Marcus, he performed better in race 1. Nobody really had a chance to do anything in race 2 because it was abandoned after, 5, 6, 7 laps? Not even that. But at least Marcus shone a little bit better in Formula 2.
And Bob's referencing Marcus Armstrong because we're Kiwi tragics. Just
yes, Marcus Armstrong. But still, he's off the pace. He's still off the pace a little bit when you compare him to Lundgaard, his teammate, in ART Grand Prix. So, yeah, good on Marcus. He's still going. They've got another 2 events happening. It's the Bahrain, isn't it, coming up? So, yeah, I just hope Marcus gets back on something. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong at all. But there you go.
You're going to have years like that, though, aren't you?
Yeah,
there are years that you'd rather
so competitive
that
too,
didn't work because he's had such a good run over the years through the Toyota Racing Series and so on and so forth, where it's just worked.
It's not lack of talent. There's no way it's lack of talent.
No.
It's just, as I said before, there's some
tough game.
Just a little disconnect somewhere that he's not getting it right. And Christian Lundgaard, his teammate, is getting it better right. So there you go. But that was, of course, at Sochi, which is on the scale of really good tracks to really bad tracks, it disappears off the bottom with a couple of the ones in the Middle East.
It's not a fantastic venue.
No.
I've been there.
At least it's got a nice background. There's something to look at when the cars are driving past. Not like Taylor and Bend. I mean,
Sochi is not that flash, trust me.
All right, but there were people there. That was very flash. There were 30,000 people in the crowd, which is like, what are those carbon forms doing up there in the stands?
All those pictures we're used to seeing, they were moving. You know, the people sitting in seats, they were actually moving.
Getting to F1, the thing, again, you know, obviously Lewis and issues with the practice starts and pit lane. I'm just going to say this is not the first trip up that the team has made as a team in recent Grand Prix. You know, we had the pit stop thing recently as well, and calling them in or late call.
Of course, pit lane's open.
You know, so
yeah, but they didn't realise he was going to go as far as he was. They thought he was going to go 2 or 3 metres further on, which he would have been allowed to do, but not all the way around the corner and nearly on the racetrack. And then he got all grumpy because he doesn't think he should be penalised. It's against the bloody rules, for goodness sakes. To get, you know,
they're there for everybody, Lewis.
Keeps the championship alive too.
One thing good happened over the weekend, at the very beginning of the weekend. A guy called Stefano Domenicali was announced as we'll call it the replacement. He's got a flash title for Chase Carey in Formula One. Now, Stefano, I know him very well. That's wrong to say. I know him quite well. I first met him in Imola when he was parking up the trucks and things like that. He did that as a favour, and then he joined Ferrari and all sorts of things. Darcy, you might remember we were at the Australian Grand Prix, and I greeted a guy who greeted me underneath the entrance.
Yes.
That was Stefano.
In fact,
Wonderful guy.
I've probably got a photograph of him in here.
Well,
Just going through those ones in the day.
So he's a wonderful guy, and what a fantastic replacement for Chase Carey, and what a fantastic guy to run Formula One for them, especially with Ross Brawn. Some very level heads there, I tell you, so it's only going to get good. Grumpy Hamilton, I got written down here. And now he says they're trying to stop me. Oh, bullshit. I mean, good grief. He gets so angry sometimes. What a superb driver, but just now and again he just winds you up. He made mistakes. That's all there is to it. Let's see. I've got here Verstappen. Very strong drive from Verstappen. Albon, disappointing. I still think he's there because of that Thai connection with the owner of Red Bull, who happens to be Thai as well as Austrian. So, I mean, you know, not saying, but he's being defended too much. Carlos Sainz, not a good look, whacking the ball with the wall as he went through the barriers.
That was, and the commentators said they all jumped back a foot when they saw it, even on the replay. And I'm with you on that. It was the same when you go like that. Whoa, that hit hard.
That's because you felt the hit even when you're watching it on telly.
Lando Norris then struggled from then onwards, and they were looking really good. They qualified quite well. Perez really should have a drive somewhere. He's just a fantastic race driver he's turned into. Give him a good car, which he's got, and he's there right up there.
Don't let him go to Haas.
No,
we don't want to go there.
No, I do. I want him to go there because I want Haas to improve. he's not going to go anywhere at the moment, so Haas has got to be as good as anywhere. Ricciardo, good drive, but Ocon, not so much. I thought he was struggling again. Leclerc and Vettel.
It was a great weekend for Ferrari.
Yeah, okay.
Are you kidding me? I'm just taking into account what's happened this year. I was cheering. Tifosi rolling on.
And one thing I've never heard before, somebody being, their start was put off by a bee splatting into the helmet. And that was...
Bottas, wasn't it?
Yes,
some kind of
Bottas.
Yeah, there was some kind of big bee or a large insect or something that flew into his
cockpit. On his helmet. It distracted him, so I thought that was quite funny. But anyway, as a Grand Prix, well, it happened.
Easy way around that, then get an aero screen like IndyCar.
Okay,
and a seagull hit it.
Maybe not. Hey, we'll touch on IndyCar shortly. I'm sure you've got lots of news around what's happening. Yeah, well, we've got a racing weekend coming up this weekend, and I'm going to be on holiday out of everything range over that weekend, so I'm a little sad about that, to be frank. But,
it's all right. You can catch up if you watch the podcast on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll catch up. I'll find out what's going on there. Before we do that, though, guess what I did last week, boys?
Oh?
Guess what I did last week?
Go on.
You know what I did last week.
Yeah,
I heard you. I didn't know you did it. I heard you were going to do it.
Oh, I
did. Hear the screaming from here.
No, it's not screaming, it's laughter. I was lucky enough to be invited out to, I suppose, the opening of Jack's Ridge, which is supposed to be a stage in the World Rally Championship. Of course, it didn't happen due to COVID, as we all know. Andrew Hawkswood, or Hawkswood Civil, it's basically his backyard. And it's full of all sorts of bits and bobs and rally cars and sheds. And he took a digger and dug himself a 7K special stage out the back of his place. Now, the 2.5K in the middle of it is what they're using for the Battle of Jack's Ridge, which is coming up November 15, I believe it is, mid-November, where they're going to run, they're looking at around about 70-odd cars, and they'll take it down to 32 to 16 to 8 to 4 to 2 to a winner. So a real day of entertainment. Great track, really easy to see. Lots of incredible vantage points, really exciting. So I was taken down there. Emma Gilmour, who I've been interviewing now for about, I think she started her rally career when I started Radio Sport about 18, 19 years ago. Finally, I get to have a go in the car with her.
I don't think you should say that.
Finally. Now, she didn't like me saying that either, but at the end of the day, we've both been around a long time. So I jumped in the Swift and got to have a crack around that. And she got to the end of it. She says, Darcy, I'm so glad you're not my co-driver. Why do you keep laughing all the time? Do you think this is funny? You are so loud. I wanted to lean over and pull out your intercom, but it was really special to do that track. Great little track. I'm really looking forward to that weekend. It's backing off the rally of the city of Auckland, which is going to be in and around a number of the special stages to the north of Auckland that were going to be used for WRC. So it's a good weekend, mid-November. Look, it's not back, but you've got to commend PJ and all the crew for actually getting out there and doing something. And Hawkswood for what he did as well.
Without PJ and all the helpers around him, there wouldn't be any form of major rally around the Auckland area.
It's also a very big statement to the FIA saying, we're here, we're ready. Let us have another go in 2021. And I spent a lot of time with Michael Goldstein out there when he was involved with what we thought was going to be WRC event this year, and it's worthy. It's we've had Fogues on the line, so we can say, well, tough Australia. We are actually worthy of that, and we still are. And Jack's Ridge is great. One of the big things about Jack's Ridge, as opposed to, say, some other stages, is it's accessible. It's within a short drive of the greatest, largest city in the country, Auckland.
It's 10 minutes from the Manukau city, from the terminal.
It's dead easy. So, big things to come in Jack's Ridge, and I think you're going to update us nearly every week from now on.
Oh, you think so? Yeah. Let me in the car again. I said, next time, Emma, can I have a drive? Can I have a pedal? Go on, please. Nah, that's never going to happen. Should we take a wee look? So that was in the rally car. That was a lot of fun. And don't let me pedal. In fact, Dale Atkins from the rally school will tell you it's really not a good idea to let me get behind the wheel, I think. All I heard from the driver who took me around was, will you slow down? I couldn't help myself. Hey, before we get into IndyCar, because it's really turning into a wonderful end to what's been an amazing season so far, just one more thing on F2, Bob.
Yeah, I do want to say young Mick Schumacher won a race at the weekend. He now leads the championship by 191 points. His father, obviously, there's a huge amount going on with his father that nobody really knows about because and that's fair call. It's nothing to do with us whatsoever. But Mick Schumacher, when he came into racing, everybody said, yeah, he's here because of his dad and he's here because of this. But gradually he's got better and better and better. Can you imagine what it must be like for that kid to have come through with that name on his back? I know it's always difficult for any son or daughter of a famous father or mother to actually go into the sport and do the sport. But can you imagine what it's like for him being in that sport and being possibly unsuccessful when you're carrying the name Schumacher on your back? And now he is being successful, and he seems to be a really nice kid. I don't know him, never met him. He seems to be a really nice kid. I think he should be congratulated. Is that the right word? He should be proud of what he's achieving himself, because, he might have little doors open now and again, but it's the old thing, like Stroll in many ways. If you don't perform, you ain't going to be there. And he has performed, and he's done incredibly, incredibly well in his demeanour to other people as well. He's friendly. He speaks well. He's a real credit, and I hope he actually succeeds, despite the name he's got.
The sad part there is that, because of Michael's condition, he can't share it with his dad.
There is
shame.
That. Yeah.
Just very quickly, just because we're talking about that, big shout out to the Boniface family. Thomas Boniface, young driver and former Ford in New Zealand this year, involved in an accident in the last couple of weeks, still in the Waikato hospital. And I know, Tomo, if you're listening, because you're listening to messages and everything, you just hang in there, bud. We're all thinking of you, and here's to a speedy recovery.
Absolutely. Let's talk some IndyCar now. Of course, Scott McLaughlin is going to appear because St. Pete's is happening.
St. Pete's happening, yep. Wow. So we've got 3 rounds to go. So 2 this weekend at IMS, and then the trip down to St. Pete. Big deal for McLaughlin is that he's got to get from Bathurst to St. Pete in the space of a week. So there's a fair bit of flying to go there.
I should think he'd fly over hot coals to do that.
Well, yeah, and then baptism of fire at that track, as I've talked about many times. It's not an easy track, but it's happening. So we look forward to seeing that, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to Scott in the coming weeks as well, post-Bathurst, before he gets into things at St. Pete. Big news in IndyCar this week really is driver changes, and it's alive and kicking big time. So Sebastian Bourdais confirmed at AJ Foyt Racing for a full season next year. I think that's probably quite smart. The other seat's still up for grabs. That's typical of the Foyt organisation. Then there's the sort of shell shock. It's all changed houses at Andretti, and Zach Veach gone immediately. James Hinchcliffe will be in this weekend, and presumably St. Pete. There's a big commercial tie-up there with Gainsbridge and some things going on there in terms of the sponsorship and whether Veach would stay or not, and whether they would stay or not. But ultimately, the bottom line scenario, like anything, whether it's Formula One or not, sponsor dollar counts, Veach is gone. So I don't know where Zach will get a drive for next year, so that'll be interesting. And then the other one, obviously, at Sam Smith, McLaren Autosport, whatever we want to call them this week. And Elio Castroneva's back in the car this weekend for 2 races. I really looking forward to that. I think it's great to finally see Elio outside of a Penske car. Just be good to see how he goes and gels with Pato O'Ward. The reason for Askew not being there is he's been suffering from, from being dizzy. And it's contributed to the accident that he had at the 500. So it's not a driver replacement. He's just been subbed for the week. So we'll see how we go. So yeah, there's a lot going on. But
is that Elio's first farewell tour, or is it his second farewell tour?
No, he never really farewelled, not like a TK.
So he hasn't had a farewell tour. He's going to have a farewell tour.
But I think this is interesting because it will open up a potential alliance maybe for next year for Elio at the 500 and a McLaren, because obviously there's no Alonso next year. So I like that. I'm quite excited by that one. And then, of course, Dixon, if he finishes in the top 10 this weekend twice, like he did at Mid-Ohio, that will pretty much mean all he needs to do is start at St. Pete, and title number 6 is not in the bag, but it's pretty darn close.
Chicken count
exactly.
Yet,
Don't
please.
do that.
Very much depends on where Newgarden finishes as well. I mean,
a little bit. And the thing again, and I've talked to the teams, is massive contrast between when they were there last and racing effectively in October. Much cooler. So we'll see. But that's the week in IndyCar.
Yep, something to look forward to. And I think that winds it up for the Racing World podcast. I'd like to thank you all for watching and for listening.
Whoa,
here we
hold
go.
the presses. I'm sure you've heard that Valentino Rossi has signed. I've got to talk about MotoGP. It's one of the best forms of motor racing. Valentino Rossi is going to be racing next year. He's in the SRT Petronas team. He had to make way in the Yamaha factory team. so that Fabian Coulthard could get in there. Well, Coulthard, so it's a swap between the two. Well, Coulthard won the race of the weekend and has been winning races. SRT, it's the factory team in all but name, frankly. So I hope that Valentino does well, frankly, and rushing through, because I know we do, because it'll go on forever. Super Formula, Nick Cassidy came third at the weekend, so he's back fifth in the championship in the Super Formula. So that's good for him as well. Good for Nick.
I'll just leave us on this.
Okay, I'll just leave us.
Carrying on.
This is from Wild Bean Cafe. So Wild Bean Cafe, if you ever want to sponsor the show, we're open to the sponsorship at any time. And Mr. McMurray, this is the double, triple chocolate muffin for your birthday.
Lord.
So happy birthday on behalf of Racing World. That's our entire budget spent for the week. Darcy, she's all yours.
There's no 110 candles in it.
No, there is not. That's it. Hey, thanks for listening on Spotify. Thanks for listening on Anchor FM, on Radio Public as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, we're sorry about our faces, but please give us a like, give us a share, and subscribe. That'll give us justification to carry on. Hopefully we'll be around for your next birthday, Bob McMurray. On behalf of Bob and David, this is Darcy Watergrave wishing you a wonderful week in racing.
Race Control Magazine is your IndyCar fan mag and so much more. Publishing monthly online on issuu.com, you will find Race Control Magazine there for you to download and enjoy everything IndyCar and so much more. Behind-the-scenes features, race reports and the entire Road to Indy series are just part of what you will find, along with stunning images captured from the series' leading photographers. Grab your copy today at issw.com to complete your motorsport read.
You have a dream. You have all the drive in the world. You have talent to burn. Now all you need is a chance. Toyota are committed to developing and nurturing New Zealand's next generation of world-class racing drivers, because if you can dream it, we can do it.
Racing World is presented by Race Control Magazine.